Well, it's time to pick a number. Good morning, everybody. This is Martin John, and I am here to talk about the Tao Te Ching. I'm going to go visit a friend today, and so I wanted to get this in early. I want to pick my number. I want to look and see what the Tao has to offer me, and potentially, if you're listening, you. Um, I am always open to talking about the Tao, and the Tao is an ancient text. The Tao Te Ching is an ancient text written about 600 BCE, so it's 3,000 years old, thereabouts. And one of the great things about having things that are that old in our periphery and in our knowledge and in our grasp is that we get to see how things were different and what remains the same, because the things that remain the same are the things that are true. You know, now if they've waxed and waned, and we can see that over time, then we know that the things that have remained in that, like the parts of it that have remained, the core of what has waxed and waned, right? Like there's the moon, and it's not that the quarter moon is the, and like the first quarter is the true moon or the full moon. It's what it is that is true. And so we recognize that the moon is true, not what we witness, right? Not just the part that we can see, because the part that we can see changes, but it's the thing that it is that's true. So when we look at something that was written 3,000 years ago, and then we take into consideration things that were written after that, and then we take into consideration experiences we've had in our lives, and we take into consideration like movies that were written and produced 100 years ago, and we start to see a pattern of what is true. We start to have enough data to triangulate what truth is. And truth is not what I say. Truth isn't even me. Truth is you and your connection to everything. That's what truth is. So I'm going to close my eyes for a moment, and I'm going to pick a number. Unless someone wants to pick a number, you can step up at any time and pick a number between 1 and 81, because there are 81 verses in the Tao Te Ching, and we read one. I select one every day to kind of get me started and moving forward. And I'm looking at 58. Let's see what 58 has to offer us today. To oversee, don't interfere. In overseeing anything, don't interfere. Let everything flourish in its own time. Interfering, you get met with resistance, or worse, apathetic adherence. Misery and misfortune are tied to expectation. To expect success is to focus on failure. To expect happiness is to invite misery. To expect moral adherence is to flirt with tragedy. There is no escaping it. Expecting good yields bad. This is interfering. It has always been true. The master, therefore, is content to simply be an example. She has no desire to impose and trusts all she oversees. But she is firm but yielding. She is sharp, yet none are cut by her. She is radiant, but easy on the eyes. To oversee, don't interfere. What do you think that is talking about? To oversee, don't interfere. That first line, in overseeing anything, don't interfere. Let everything flourish in its own time. So what are some things that we oversee? We oversee our children. We oversee, processes like making dinner. We oversee a garden. We oversee our pets. We may oversee people in our job. To oversee anything, don't interfere. Let everything flourish in its own time. Interfering, you get met with resistance, or worse, apathetic adherence. Let's think about that. Interfering, you get met with resistance, or worse, apathetic adherence. So let's think about interfering. Interfering, when we interfere, we get in the way of, right? We interpose ourselves into a position. So if we're managing, if we're raising children, if we're managing a group, if we're even if we're um, cultivating a garden, we're overseeing the growth of something, right? So what is our interfering? Is our interfering watering it? Maybe not. Sometimes our overseeing is staking things, when we stake it so that it can, withstand its own weight. Overseeing also kind of means that, oh, I want my child to be a certain way, and so I'm going to put it into certain things that maybe it doesn't want. It doesn't want to play an instrument, but I think playing an instrument's a real important thing, and so I'm going to make sure that my child plays an instrument. And then I get met with what? Resistance. Or worse, apathetic adherence. Think about getting your child to play an instrument, and they don't practice, and they don't care. They just want a guitar. So they tell you, "Yeah, I want a guitar. I'll play guitar." And then they get it. And they don't they don't want to play the guitar. Maybe they just want a guitar. Maybe you want them to play guitar. So you get them a guitar, and then they're sitting there with the guitar, and they will resist playing it. Or even worse, they will have apathetic adherence to your rules, right? To your interfering. You're like, I want you to play guitar. Here's the guitar. Here are the lessons. Here's everything. But you're not getting any better. And if you are getting better, you're not doing it in a happy way. You're not doing it full of like you come home and you want to play the guitar. You just come home and you're like, okay, well, now I got to do this thing because you need me to do this thing in order for me to get what I want, right? I want a toy, and as long as I practice 5 days this week, I'll get my toy, or I want to play the video game, and the only way I can play a video game is by my, like an hour of video game means I got to practice guitar for an hour. Okay, pluck, pluck, pluck. Oh, that was an hour. Let me go play my video game. That is what we mean by apathetic adherence. They will adhere to your interfering, but in such an apathetic way as to it not being really what you expected. You wanted them to maybe hold your excitement for playing guitar, for having to learn something. The next line states, misery and misfortune are tied to expectation. Here's the thing, if you interfere, that means you have an expectation for something. If it comes to a relationship, or if it comes to, like I said, raising children or managing a group, your interfering means that you have an expectation for them. And you probably have an expectation that they can't do it on their own, or they won't do it on their own. So if you're there with your interfering and you want to step in and get your mitts in the muck, and all of a sudden everything around you is just not what you expected it to be, right? These are expectations. Misery and misfortune are tied to expectations. Why would you interfere if you didn't have expectations? And then you also have an expectation that they can't do it on their own. To expect success is to focus on failure, right? So if you have a child and you expect them to play the guitar and do it successfully because that's what you did, or that's what you wanted, you get into this place of like, what you see is that they could do better. They could always do better. They could always do better. So we're focused on the failure. They could do better because your expectation is success. And even if they do succeed, there's going to be a point where, well, now what's next? What's the next success? Right? There's always more. Always. To expect happiness is to invite misery. So if you do something, you're like, this is going to make me happy. I mean, how many times have you spoken to or experienced that of just like, I thought this was going to make me happy. I thought quitting drinking was going to make me happy. I thought this was going to make me happy. I thought getting this job was going to make me happy. I thought this relationship was going to make me happy. And the reason that you thought that is because you're recognizing that you're still experiencing misery. Why? Because you haven't been at the core of that. You've expected it by interfering with things outside of yourself. Right? You're interfering to oversee. You're even overseeing your life. Let's not forget. Right? You're overseeing this body. You're overseeing this life, and if you interfere with it, if you get in the way with expectations of like, okay, well, when I get fit, I'll be happier. When I run that marathon, I'll be no, no, no. There's just another marathon to run, and then there are those like crazy 100-mile marathons and other things like ultra marathons, right? To expect moral adherence is to flirt with tragedy. So let's look at that because that seems to be outside of the realm of what we've been talking about thus far, right? To expect moral adherence. Where does that come in? Moral adherence, this is about interfering again, right? So when someone doesn't adhere to the moral landscape that you've created, i.e., mass shootings and other things like that, um, when you expect people to be good, all of a sudden we're focusing on the bad, and the bad becomes real bad, right? We start talking about like ideal victims, like mass shooting victims. We start talking about like rape victims. We start talking about child molestation victims. We start talking about all the ideal victims out there. When we start arguing about moral adherence and that we should expect moral adherence, well, as soon as we start talking about expectation of other people upholding our moral values, we start to flirt with tragedy because we have elevated that action to a moral action, not an actual, right? It's not about um, it's not about just an action. It's now put in the category of moral, right? It is now a moral thing that we're looking at. It's not just an action. It's not, this is morally incorrect. And when you elevate something to a moral action, when you elevate something to fall in the category of moral choice, you are now talking about tragedy because now it's been elevated. It's not just an action. It's not just like, oh, I went to the store. Oh, I committed mass murder, right? Like all of a sudden, one of those has more weight because they stand on the side of moral decisions, right? It stands. So to expect moral adherence, right? To have an expectation of what your moral, um, what is deemed a moral choice means immediately that once that's broken, it's tragic. It's no longer it's no longer just a choice. It's not about going to the grocery store. It's about like this is now moral. There's no escaping it. Expecting good yield bad. Because that's what we focus on when we start to expect good, right? We focus on its opposite. We we have a positive and a negative comes from it, right? Like as soon as if I create a box, if I draw a square on a piece of paper, there is positive and negative space. There's no avoiding it. There's no way that I could have, so whether or not the positive space is the outside and then the square is cut out, or the square is the positive space sitting on a field of negative space, doesn't matter. However you see it, you create one and the other. By putting anything on the page at all, you are interfering. And it has always been true, right? You can't escape it. The expectation of anything, putting anything on the page, doing any of those things is going to yield its opposite. And so when you elevate something to a moral standard, it becomes a tragedy when it happens. When you expect to be happy, you're inviting misery because you're focused on happiness. And so it's not just a measure of happiness, because we could, if we measured life on a scale of happiness, and it's just like, okay, this is just low on the happiness scale, right? Like my mom died or whatever. I am currently low on the happiness scale. No, you start talking about, oh, I'm miserable. So now you've changed the measuring stick. And that's the problem with humans. We love measuring things. Measure, 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 measure. And we don't always recognize that we're not always measuring with the same device. Right? Like if you wanted to measure liquid and you wanted to measure distance, you'd use a different device. Right? But when you start talking about like happiness, you're like, oh, I got happiness, I got sadness, I got depression, and this is the measure of those things, rather than simply measuring it with one thing. Right? Because those things are all emotions. So you should measure emotions from one measuring stick if you want to measure it all. And I think measuring does interfere because this moment is something. Your measuring it doesn't change that. So don't interfere. Don't measure. Don't say this is how much. This is where I am. And it is the same as it always is. And sure, we can measure, but in measuring, I start pitting myself up against the opposite of that which I'm measuring. So if I'm measuring how sad I am, I'm measuring myself against something else. The master, therefore, is content to simply be an example. This means not interfering. It means not being sad, not being happy, not measuring that bullshit, not measuring your success, not measuring your failure, not measuring anything. Just be an example. She has no desire to impose and trusts all she oversees. So here's the thing, when we can trust all that we oversee, that means we trust those around us. And we trust what they do. We trust our children. She is firm but yielding, sharp, yet no one gets cut by her. She is radiant but easy on the eyes.
Oh,
Hello, Guidel. How are you?
hi, Garcia. Are you a parent?
I am not a parent.
Oh my God, but you are spitting out loads of wisdom on here. I don't know if you're reading a book or this just coming out of you, but it's beautiful.
Well, this is Tao of the Day. In the Tao of the Day, we focus on the Tao Te Ching, and the version of the Tao that I'm reading is one that I wrote, and then I am riffing off of that. So I'm talking about what this verse 58
Oh
um,
my
is
God, I
addressing.
gotta read that.
Well, yeah, I can
That's
send it to you. I can send it to you over chat here. So what I do here on Tao of the Day, and we could read 58 again if you'd like. But what we do here on Tao of the Day is I ask you to pick a number between 1 and 81
mhm.
because there are 81 verses of the Tao and the Tao Te Ching. Have you heard of it?
No.
No. The Tao Te Ching is an ancient text written about 600 BCE. So it's
Uh-huh.
about 3,000 years old. And presumably by a guy Lao Tzu, but all of that doesn't really matter. What it says is what matters. And what it talks about is about how we can live a more reasonable life. And what we mean by reasonable is that we don't ask the things around us to change for us.
Right,
So,
right.
so we accept things as they are and
Yes.
we change for that. So if have you heard of Wim Hof?
No.
No.
I feel so
No, no, no.
out of
Don't. These are kind of wacky things sometimes. Well, Wim Hof is also known as the Iceman, and he meditates in like streams that are filled with ice. So he even for him, when we look at this idea of not having of living reasonably and not asking things to change, he doesn't even ask the cold to change for him, and his body temperature stays up, and he actually changes the temperature of the water with his body temperature. So when we look at like, oh, I can't, I'm affected by you because you're doing this, it's like, no, you're allowing yourself to be affected. And so when we look at the
Absolutely.
Tao, when we look at the Tao, it has these 81 chapters. And what I do, are I just ask my guests to pick a number. I read through it, and then we go through it, and we get some ideas about it, go through it line by line and see what it has to say.
Yes, I realized that. I don't know which line you were reading, but I think I opened it up. Well, you came through
Hmm.
because I follow you. I've been following you for probably 2 years now, but I'm in
Mm.
and out. And yes, where you said focusing more on the failures in order for success, you must focus on the failure.
Hmm.
I have two sons that are like only a year apart, a year and something apart,
Hmm.
and one is um going the right way. He played sports in college. He's graduating soon. He keeping up his GPA is pretty good, and even though he's still with me at the age of 20, he's going to be 20 soon, but he's just he seems like he has wisdom in him,
Hmm. Hmm.
and he knows what he wants out of life.
Hmm.
And my other one is just a wreck.
Hmm.
He doesn't know what's he doing, which is expected for his age. He's still trying to figure it out and figure himself out. But then I'm looking at, I used to get frustrated about it, and I don't know what to do, and I don't know what I'm doing wrong. One is going right and the other one's going left.
Hmm.
So it's like, by you saying that I have to focus on the failures, that makes sense. That makes sense. I have to with the other one, because see, we can't treat I let me use plants for example. We can't treat plants the same way. This is the same thing as your measurement stuff that you just said,
Yeah.
but there are some plants that are perennial. They
Hmm.
can endure the winter and come back,
Hmm.
when spring gets here. But the other ones, they really can't. And you have to take care of those. You have to, if the snow comes, you have to pick them up and put them in a house until the snow goes away, and then you put them back outside, right?
Yeah, well, let me ask you a real
And
let me ask you a question. Is the one that's in college and gets good GPA, is that your firstborn?
no, he's
I
my
didn't
middle
think so.
son.
That's your middle son. Okay. So
Yes.
the one that's going in the wrong direction,
Yes, he's my oldest.
he's your oldest. Okay. And can I ask where his father is?
Well, he started going the wrong way when his father
Okay.
passed
So
away.
here's my take on things. Real briefly. One, firstborns kind of observe from the outside, right? And they observe without a frame of reference.
Mm,
Okay, so they don't know what's good and what's bad and what's right and what's wrong and all of this. They just observe, and
mm,
what they observe often is that the head of household,
mm,
often the male, not always, um, is who we should emulate because they are the head of household.
mm.
Then an interesting thing often happens when a second child is born, because the second child gets more reference, because
Right,
the
right.
second child gets to witness not only the relationship between the parents, but also the relationship between them and the parents individually, but then also the relationship of the firstborn and the parents, and the individual relationships that they have with them. But the firstborn doesn't get all of those relationships. They only get the parents and themselves. And so there's only about half of the relationships, and so even less frame of reference to deal with. And so the second one has been able to see, oh, head of household's kind of fucked up. Like, we don't need to emulate that, because that's not going to yield great results.
Mm,
So what ends up happening is firstborn, depending is very dependent on a lot of things, but firstborn often will emulate what it's witnessed from
Mm.
head of household, or the one who's getting the attention. And oftentimes, and if he's 20, the masculine sort of entity in a relationship will get more attention, and the feminine will do more work, and to keep the attention coming. And so it's really an interesting thing. And when you look at that, like, now he is still very young, even though
Mm.
he's 20. This is what we're reading here with number 58 is to oversee, don't interfere, right? And
Mhm.
what it says here is interfering, you get met with resistance,
Right.
or worse, apathetic adherence.
Right.
He might obey, or he might allow you to interfere, but not in a way that is going to be permanently ingrained in their life, because they're simply doing it so they can stay in the house.
Mm.
And so that becomes a thing where it's like, is would you be proud of yourself for having had that result? And that's the
Well,
thing. We wouldn't.
it's not more about my expectations.
No, no,
It's
no.
more about, a mother's worried, a typical mom's worried that
Of course.
one day we might be gone and they will lose one less resources
Right. And
to
they're the
get by.
major resource that they're currently
Hmm.
leaning on is going to
Yeah,
be lost.
not
Now,
that he's a codependent, because
no, 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 no.
trying
But
to, but
but
it's more like about, I know I'm not supposed to be interfering with his life. I'm talking about my oldest son now.
right, of
The
course.
middle one, oh my God, it's a breeze. I don't have to
Yeah,
worry
of
about
course. Of
anything.
course.
But he's more like, so I'm like, oh my God, maybe I need to focus on the things that he's lacking in order to help him, because I have been trying to figure it out how to help this dude. And it's like, it's so hard because he doesn't
So
want to interfere, and he lives in a different states, but I know he's going through a lot, and
mhm.
I'm just worried.
So here's the, like, as this one sort of wraps up, as this 58 wraps up, and I would love to ask you for a number because that might help us as
Oh
well.
my
But
God, send it to me so I know what to ask.
yeah, well, just pick a number between 1 and 81 and we'll look.
Okay,
Um,
one. All right.
what's that?
Oh, no, I was just
Okay, so the end of this, and we'll pick this next if you can come back up. But what this states at the end of this is the master. Now, this is the master at not interfering. This is the master at not asking anybody or anything to change for them. Right. This is the master. This is
mm,
something that we aspire to be, nothing that we can actually attain, maybe. But the master, therefore, is content to simply be an example.
mhm,
She has no desire to impose and
mm,
trusts all she oversees. See, and I think what I'm hearing from you is that there is a bit of a lack of trust that he is going to be okay.
ah,
She is firm but yielding. She
mm,
is sharp, yet none are cut by her. She is radiant but easy on the eyes. When you try and sometimes be bright for somebody, it's hard for them to look at you
mm,
because they might have shame.
mm,
But when you can just be you, in all with all your faults, you
mhm,
can be radiant, and they can see you, and they can see the example that you're setting. Where when you make a mistake, you
I like
firmly admit it and move on and
that.
correct it. So that when they find themselves in a place where they are failing, they can find the thing that was a mistake, correct it, and move on. Don't linger. And they will do that because they are being led by example. And I'm sure that that's what you're doing, but there probably
Yeah.
are ways sometimes when you want to be more of an example for somebody because they're in a space that you're judging as failure. And so you want to be a little bit better
Mm,
than you actually are. And
absolutely.
sometimes that's a difficult trap because we have a belief. We have a belief in what they're actually experiencing. But that's us. That's everything that we're witnessing is all
Mm.
about us. There's nothing, there's very little to do with them. And our lack of faith, our lack of trust in the fact that they're going to be okay with or without us.
Oh my God. Thank you so much. I love it. Oh my God. What is it called? Tao of the day.
Well, this is called, this is,
Yeah.
yeah, the book is called The Tao Te Ching. It's
Oh my goodness.
Taoteaching.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So, I know we don't have a lot of time. If you can come back up, I would love if you were to pick a number between 1 and 81, and we'll read your Tao for the day.
Okay. Well, I will listen for now because I
Okay.
don't know what I'm picking, but
No,
I'll
well, and that's
remember
the
the
point. It's
numbers.
it's very much like I'll let you step out, but I want you to know it is very much like tarot cards. You just pick a card.
Oh,
It's not
okay.
about knowing.
Yeah, okay. I like that. Okay. Thank you so much, Garcia.
Absolutely. You have a wonderful day,
You
and yeah, I look forward to connecting again, Guido.
okay.
Yeah. Ciao. Okay. Hello everybody. This is Martin John, and this is Tao of the Day. We just went over 58. Guidel came up and we chatted a little bit about 58 and being a parent, and here comes one of the here comes a parent now. Truly, Julie, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm just gonna pop my earphones in so I can
Yeah.
talk to you. So
Oh yeah.
hold the line a second. I found what you were saying really insightful, actually. Hold the line. I'm gonna pop
What
these
do you mean?
earphones.
Actually, I always find everything I say is insightful.
Hold the line. Putting you in my ears. There we go.
Yeah,
You
actually, I found actually.
Well, no, I wasn't expecting it, should I say. That would be
Oh,
better. So I
okay.
wasn't expecting to have an insight like that.
Oh,
As
well,
you were talking,
beautiful.
I was kind of going through the dynamics of my own family as I was bringing my children up. So and I
Yeah,
can definitely see that these kind of this direction, this energy that is apparent in my children's character now.
yeah,
So it's really really good. I enjoyed it very very much.
yeah. And I like the idea of not interfering, But
Oh gosh, yes.
if you don't interfere, you have to have a lot of faith.
Yeah, it's difficult not
Hmm.
to interfere.
Yeah,
It's one of the most difficult things that I've ever experienced is not interfering. It's once I stop doing that, then I get to live my life and experience me once I
yeah.
stop interfering in everything else.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
And it just takes us away from ourselves. The idea that we're interfering, and the idea that, like, parenting is overseeing.
Mm,
It's not. It's not like we have this idea that parenting is filled with interfering. We have this idea that parenting is, you know, like raising and being responsible for. I mean, I know so many parents who've had their children, even Guidel when she came on, she was like, there is a personal um there's a personal judgment around the success as she
Yeah,
sees of
yeah.
the child. And it's like, this isn't about you. And it could quickly turn into, no, 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 no. I'm not worried about me. I'm worried about my child. And it's like, well,
Mm,
that
really.
there is you in there.
I
Like
know that
there is
from
your
another
response.
angle.
Yeah.
The angle that I feel is responsibility for the bad choices my children make.
Right.
So I could say, well, that's down to me, and down to the fact that maybe I didn't raise them this way, or to think about that, or
Yeah.
some omission of mine. I could take that if I want to.
Right.
Or I could just see this as, this is my life. I'm there with them whilst they are growing their own life. They're like a sapling, they grow in their own right. And I can be close, but I don't have to be, the trainer. I don't have to be the trellis that they grow up.
Well, and this is once again what that damn scorpion, a year ago gave me the the insight of, you're seeing them from your experience. You have no idea what they're going through.
Yeah,
Your experience is telling you that this, and this, whatever, all of the things. But none of that is true. None of that is actually happening. What's happening is that you're having an experience.
yeah,
And your experience is that, like, if you're like, oh, my child is going through some rough times. No, I'm having an experience in which I believe my child is going through something. What is that telling me? I can't do anything about my child's experience because I don't even know my child's experience. I am judging it from my own place and
yeah,
the experience of which I am having.
yeah, yeah.
And that's it. You are not having your child's experience.
Correct, and you never will.
Never will. Never will.
Yeah, yeah,
There's
absolutely.
there's you will never have anyone else's experience. And so all you can do is have the experience that you're having. This is why we say the master therefore is content to simply be an example. Because there is no interfering.
Yeah, just there to be observed.
That's right.
Kind of.
And when
Yes.
you interfere, you take away from yourself. You take away, and it's not this isn't a selfish thing. You take away from your life because you are misguiding yourself. Thus, you are experiencing the misguiding of others. And that might not be something you're doing, that could be coming from the outside or whatever.
It just is. It just is, Martin
Yeah.
and John. It's just, I think that, like I've said to you many, many times, I think the observations that I have these days are the biggest gift that I've ever been kind of assisted to utilize
Yeah.
with my own strength. But if I hadn't had that gift of just observing, not involving, just observing, I wouldn't be where I am now.
Yeah.
So it shows you that really things happen, you have experiences and stuff, and you don't have to own them, you don't have to be responsible for them, you don't have to claim any kind of influence
Mm-mm.
on these things.
No.
They're just going to happen anyway. The only thing you can do is live and experience your own experience.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
try not to interfere or try and get other things to change
Yeah.
because you're having an experience that's uncomfortable.
Yeah, stop owning everybody else's
Yeah.
experience.
Why did they have to change because of you? Oh, the music's on loud. All right. Their music's on loud. They like it loud. Now what do like you, and if there's an ordinance in your city that says they need to turn it down, well, now all you have is more proof that you're a victim.
Get some earplugs, really. Go out for a walk. I don't know. It's funny, isn't it? It is funny.
Mm-hmm.
We are very. I feel this is something that I've just observed. I feel we are very much kind of guided to police each other so much, and I think that's kind of interfering
Yeah.
in a way. Yeah,
Well, that's like to oversee, don't interfere. And when you talk about policing others, it's overseeing.
yeah, yeah,
I want to oversee my neighbor. Why? Because I'm it's too uncomfortable to look at my own shit.
yeah. Well, you're looking at your neighbour because it's distraction from
Right.
looking at yourself.
That's
Yeah,
right. Yeah.
or even living your own experience. You can be so absorbed with your neighbour that you're not actually living yourself.
Yeah. My neighbor, and I love my neighbor. He's a great help to me and
I've
all
got
this.
lovely
But
neighbours.
but but I've noticed, like, I'll go out and I'll do some things in my yard and stuff. And then we'll be having a conversation. It's, oh yeah, I saw you out there. And it's so interesting because I never see him. I never
Maybe one
see him
day he'll be
doing anything.
brave enough. Yeah, maybe he'll be brave enough to come and join you. You
Well,
know.
like he's great. He'll come over if I'm toiling at something or whatever,
Mm,
and he'll, like, that's, it's not about that. It's more about, like, and I'm sure he's not judging or anything like that, but just the fact that he sees me and what I'm doing, and I never see him. Like, unless, like,
yeah.
he's out and we're sitting there kind of chatting or whatever, like, when he is out, I usually kind of step over
I
and
just
say
want to just
hello
want
and
to
stuff.
stop you right there, just to
You know.
tell you that you are actually very interesting. If you were my neighbour, I'd be spying on you all the time because you're a doer. You do
Yeah,
things. You live.
there's always stuff
Yeah,
getting done.
yeah,
Always
yeah,
stuff kind of happening. And he is as well. Like,
yeah.
it shouldn't, like, he's helped me with a furnace. He's helped me. He's a great guy. He's a really good neighbor. And if and as he gets older, I would love to be able to, be a replacement neighbor for him. Meaning, like, the all of the great things that he does for others, I would love to be able to step in and be a good
Gift him.
neighbor as well.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but um, but he's definitely focused externally because he's probably, I mean, I've heard that he's a bit of a hoarder. He has multiple people living in his house that I don't think is pleasant for him. So I do think that there are some things that are, um, difficult and require pacifying.
Yeah, I think, from listening to you, I think you are an inspiration, Martin.
Oh, well, thank you.
I've said that to you before, but yeah,
Yeah,
you are. Just receive
for
that.
some, I
Yeah,
will receive that. I
yeah.
can receive that. So,
Can
do you
I
have a
pick a
number for
number?
me today?
Yes, yes,
Yeah,
I
come on.
do. I do. I'm going to go for number 10 today.
Number 10. I don't know when the last time I had someone pick 10. Okay, so number 10 is entitled "Can You?" question mark. So it's, can you? Can you? Can you?
Can
Can
I?
you
Ooh.
control your mind so it doesn't wander? Can you control your body so it doesn't wander? Can you endorse all that you do? Can you love everyone so as to inspire them? Can you do all this without interfering and remain unknown? Can you leave behind knowing and open yourself to understanding? Can you be like Tao and give birth without possessing? Can you be like Tao and act without expecting? Can you be like Tao and lead without dominating? If so, it would be considered great.
That's lovely, isn't it?
Yeah.
There's an inspiration for you.
I like how this starts. Can you control your mind so it doesn't wander? Can you control your body so it doesn't wander? Like, the mind and the body are the physical things, right? Your soul is the thing that you're carrying around with you, and that's the you that is you.
Mm.
But but we so often think and then move, and we don't sit still enough.
Mm.
And it's like, it is controlling those things. Like, what is this moment? What is happening right now? I don't want to wonder what could be. I don't want to wander somewhere else to pacify. I just want to be here.
Mm. I often think that thoughts are closely linked to body.
Mm-hmm.
Thoughts are behaviors,
Mm-hmm.
and they come about through feelings.
Yep.
So I think when you can calm your mind enough and just drop all thoughts, really, a bit of practicing of meditation is very good for that. It gets you to a space where both your mind and your body are still.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when you reward yourself, because that's what you're doing, you're rewarding yourself for just being, and then all else will flow.
And it's tough because, I mean, I've talked about this before, and if you can, I know you only got a little more than a minute left, but
Mm,
if you can come back on, please do.
I will, yeah.
Okay. I talk about the idea of the salad and the cookie. You know that a salad, I mean, depending on the salad, there are salads that are worse than cookies. We know that. But, um, but there's, if you have a green salad, right, and you have a cookie, one of those is going to let you know, is going to reward you for having eaten it.
Yeah,
Um, well, actually, both will reward you.
yeah,
One is will reward you on the short term, and one will reward you on the long term.
yeah,
One will reward you conspicuously, and one will reward you quietly. And when I think about that, when I think about like how that reward system is, and when you look at meditation, there is a reward, but it's not conspicuous. When
mm,
you watch when you watch Netflix, or when you watch TikTok, there's a conspicuous reward.
yeah.
And it's really important to understand the difference between the conspicuousness of a reward and its value to you as a person, right? And that's why, as this talks about controlling your mind and your body, and you mentioned meditation, the next line is, can you endorse all that you do? Remember when we used to talk about the idea that I don't like that I'm doing this?
Yeah,
When we do something and we don't like that we're doing it, we can't endorse it. We can't say this is what I want to be doing. We can only say I don't want to be doing this. And so how can I actually endorse doing it? And it's fine that we can't, but to ask the question, can you endorse all that you do? It's a important question, because you know when we eat the cookie, we'd be like, yeah, I feel good, but can I endorse it? Like, I wasn't even hungry, maybe,
mm.
you know, and I ate it because it has such a conspicuous reward.
I think that when you ask yourself, can you endorse something? It's like giving yourself a pause
Hmm.
before you make a decision, because I think, I'm sure it's not just me, but I get impulses on things.
Yeah.
Impulses then are action before thought. So if I can endorse or ask if I can endorse, it just gives me that moment before I continue. The moment before just gives me allowance and breathing space and peace
Yeah.
before I make the choice. And then I make the choice, I live with whatever I do. For me, I'd get half a cookie, eat that, and then have a salad after. Because I want the best of both worlds.
Yeah. And it's funny when we talk about endorsement, especially today,
Mm.
where everybody, like they feel like their highest value is in endorsements.
Yeah, yeah,
Everybody's out there going, my my whole doing in my life revolves around getting ads for people so that I can make money.
Yeah.
And so they alter themselves so that they can get endorsements, but can they endorse themselves?
Yeah.
And it's funny sometimes when you look at when I watch the footy and stuff, and
Oh, I watched
and
footy last night. Yes, we watched. Was it Brad? Nottingham Forest
For
against Brighton. Yeah, Forest against
Forest is
Brighton.
did you come off
We we
okay?
we we Southampton. Sorry, yeah, Southampton.
Oh,
We beat them by 1 goal.
okay,
So,
good.
whew,
Because I know you guys are clamoring down there at the bottom. There's a bunch of people like not like I know you guys got a game in hand or something, so that's good.
yeah. But you can see that struggle, can't you? Hey?
It is.
It
Yeah.
was always going to be, though, talking about sort of like endorsing things, is the football team went up into the Premiership and then they had to endorse themselves. And it was
Right.
hard work because it's a completely different game, completely
Hmm.
different kettle of fish. And there is their learning for the whole season.
I love watching, and I guess we're getting off topic, and that's fine. I love watching a team, and Hull did this when
Yeah,
they went up. You know, the championship is such a, f- a faster game with less respect. You have a
yeah,
little less respect for your opponent because they're not going to punish you the way you're going to be punished if you get a step behind in the Prem. And so it's very often that in the beginning of the season, newly promoted sides have a couple really good wins because no one really knows how to deal with them, and they're coming up and they're taking shots quicker. They're doing things faster, but with a little more but not with the kind of finesse that is required ultimately in the Premier League.
yeah. You're talking risk against defence.
Right.
Yeah,
And you'll get rewarded for risk, but eventually it'll catch you out.
yeah. You need to back it up.
Right. And I feel like that happens for newly promoted sides. And if they can stay in and get in there with like it's hard to become a fixture up there in the Prem, like to be there every year, year in, year out.
Yeah,
Like even Everton is now threatened. You
yeah.
know,
They're below us. They have the
yeah,
same points as us, but yeah, they are somebody that would be watching. Yeah,
right. And if they go down, like history doesn't matter. It's about the team you got on the pitch.
yeah,
And
yeah,
and you know and it's interesting. I don't know. I'm just obviously that's a. But I just keep when in terms of endorsement, like
yeah,
does a player, like a team is going to be endorsed by certain things. I mean, when you look at the human rights atrocities of uh you know um like Qatar Air, and like Qatar and all
yeah,
of these things that are happening, and you look at Lionel Messi or whatever, and you're like, and he played for I think Paris Saint-Germain. Did they have Qatar Air on? Either way,
yeah.
um, you know, you start looking at this idea of like, can you even endorse those people that you're connected to that are being endorsed by? Like, is that good for you? And I don't want to start kind of getting into sport and stuff like that, but it's like,
In life,
does
though, generally as
right?
well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. It's like it's you know, can you be neutral and recognize your actions and what they do and bring it all home rather than yelling at your neighbor, rather than yelling at other people, rather than bringing everybody else down? Can you endorse all that you do? Can you love everyone as to inspire them? Can you do all of this without interfering and remain unknown? Can you
Yeah.
leave behind knowing and open yourself to understanding?
Yeah. I like that. That one line there. Can you leave behind knowing and embrace understanding? That means
Hmm.
that the thing is we never truly know from moment to moment.
No.
Each moment changes what we know, and therefore, when we step into the next moment, we don't know.
Right.
And that includes people, it includes situations, it includes experiences. If you become understanding, then you can accept and assist in just being people to grow and change, experiences to grow and change, and to be what they are. Just be
And
what they are, yeah.
and your understanding is greater, right? You understand that all of this has purpose. You understand that this is my experience and it all has purpose. And you're not, and you don't know what the purpose is, and you don't know the results, and you don't know if you're going to die or when you're going to die or when it's going to be done. But you understand that this is perfect and I am here.
Yeah.
And so that's what we, like when we leave behind being sure of something so that we can embrace the fluidity of this moment. And this one continues and starts wrapping up. It says, "Can you be like Tao?" And that's "Can you be like Tao" is like the beginning of each of these lines, and it's like, "And give birth without possessing, and act without expecting, and lead without dominating." This is. I mean, I was talking earlier about parenting and give birth without possessing, act like parent without expectation, and lead without dominating, allowing all the things to be as they are. Like, and understand that that's what it is. And the last line, "If so, it would be considered great." It's like, it's not that that's the baseline. That would be considered great. Like, of course we're going to fall short of all of these things,
From time to time.
you know. But if you
Yeah.
could do this, even in an instant, just for a split second, all of these things are being, then that's great.
Yeah, what a fantastic number I picked today.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Martin John.
Mm.
I'll sit with that for quite a long time, I think. This is,
Oh,
I'll
good.
have my consolidation period. I will sit with it and ponder
Yeah,
and
you want to
enjoy.
control your mind so it doesn't wander. Control your
Yeah,
body so it doesn't wander.
yeah, yeah.
All right.
Let's sit with that for a bit.
I
Thank you
love you. My
so
best to
much.
Brad, and we will talk soon.
Brad's, yeah, hopefully we'll catch up with Brad as well. We'll be have a chat, all of us, because
Oh,
that'd be
good.
nice.
Yeah.
All right, take it easy. Much love to you,
All the love.
and your world is lovely.
Oh, thank you.
Take care. Bye bye.
Ciao. Okay. Well, I'm gonna have to wrap up because I'm gonna have to start getting ready to take a bit of a drive up north. I'm gonna visit a friend of mine, and he lives a bit of a distance away, so I'm gonna go ahead and get moving soon. Love you guys. Thank you so much for joining me for Tao of the Day. I appreciate you, and we will be in touch. If you benefit from the work I do here on Tao of the Day or wisdom in general, consider sending me a tip over at Venmo at martinjohn_Garcia. And once again, I am the recovery mentor. And what that means is I talk about recovery as in the big frame, not just recovery from drugs or alcohol or diagnoses or breakups or other things like that, but we're all recovering to who we are, right? So that's why I talk about we recover ourselves. It's not about recovering from anything, because It doesn't matter what we're recovering from. That's an individual thing. You're all recovering from certain things, sure, but everybody is recovering to who you are. When you can do that, you get to be who you are. Thank you so much for joining me, and until next time, keep recovering yourself.